So I wanted to complete the day with talking about some programs that are already happening and ways we can be working together to develop new programs. I know that there's a lot of workforce development that's being done that looks at health careers, for example, which is a little different than science careers and engineering careers and so on. But to hear about what you're doing now and how you might see models that would be applicable to some new content. We certainly have a lot of thought leaders here, and we can get into that. So I'm going to ask Laurie, and that's not Mike Oates at the end.
I'm not Mike.
Mike he wrote me this morning he had laryngitis, so Amy Allen, who works with him, is going to fill in that spot. We'll just go in the order here. So Laurie Miller-McNeill, would you like to say hello?
Hi, thank you, and thank you all for staying, because it's been a really wonderful, engaging day. I'm Director of Institutional Advancement at Westchester Community College. I always say I have the coolest job because I get to do a lot of research on what's going on nationally, where our institution's at, and then I get to work across the team and with a lot of collaborative partners to design new programs. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, is this idea of collaborating to build the workforce. So if Westchester's really wants to produce this biotechnology cluster, what do we have to do? To succeed, ultimately, we're going to need to attract and develop and nurture talent. So where is that going to come from? What are the big challenges we might face? Some of the big challenges is extraordinarily long lead time to get to careers in bioscience and technology. It just takes a very long time for people to complete their degrees. If you want to succeed, we're going to have to plant seeds, and it's actually, so if you want to produce a harvest later on, we're going to need to make sure we're planting some seeds. And if we're planting seeds, we need to make sure we're going to nurture and nourish those seeds so that they can really grow and produce a result. So here at the college, we have 5 ways in which we do that. We support research pathways through transfer articulation programs, and we do this through a lot of targeted grants from the National Science Foundation, from National Institutes for Health, and our partnership with Mercy College. And that's where we have the strongest presence in bio-life sciences, where we're really nurturing students to transfer and then go on to research degrees. We also have technician pathways, and we also use funding from the National Science Foundation, and that prepares students to go into technical pathways that support industry. We actually have a lot of those we have some of those in the applied engineering fields, but we don't have them in bio-life sciences. But we actually have a really extraordinary opportunity to reach out through National Science Foundation partners and just go ahead and import a bio-life sciences program. So if we're serious about a cluster, we ought to be thinking about that together. We also have high school partnerships where we work closely with high school partners to bring them through, but again, we're more in the applied engineering field. So if we want to do bio clusters, we really ought to be thinking about nurturing specific high school partnerships to move students through the life sciences. We could do workforce, and I know Terry's going to talk about that. And then the 5th area is really this idea of incubators. And New York State asked us in the lower Hudson Valley not to get involved in that space because there are a lot of incubators going on. So for us, really, it's helping students with transfer pathways, as well as technical pathways and high school and K-12 partnerships. So grants are the way we do that, and the best way for us to collaborate on that is to be very intentional and very thoughtful about what we want to get out of the arrangement, what we want to produce, and then just continuously improve and manage. So that gives you an idea of how we're going about it here at Westchester Community College. We're very intentional about it, but I think if we're really serious about a bio-life cluster, we're going to need to really think about how to move that down the pipeline, be very intentional and very directed. There is a lot of money and a lot of help out there for it, but it's the more focused we are, the better off we're going to be.
I can see the next meeting. I see it right now. Terry Wisell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vice President for Workforce Development and Community Education here at Westchester Community College. And so among the areas that my division delivers training in is this area of workforce development. How do we support the needs of employers in the area, and how do we support that pipeline that Laurie talked about a couple minutes ago. And so we do that through a lot of delivery of workforce credentials that are non-credit. Our student population are in many cases the individuals that Carla was talking about earlier and that some of the other speakers have been talking about, individuals who might be underrepresented in a certain industry sector, folks who are currently or underemployed, many of whom have had very exceptional career histories and find themselves circumstantially either out of work or working in career pathways for which they are overqualified. And so how can we as educators and as workforce development professionals help to support a talent pipeline in many ways low-hanging fruit, right? Folks who understand the workplace, who are prepared and credentialed to work and just need to be upskilled or retrained in the area, in this case of biotech or the biosciences. Laurie mentioned collaboration. Everything we do on the non-credit side is in collaboration, partnership with employers, with the workforce development boards. In many cases, they can be a source of financing for individuals or for programmatic ventures. Our approach is always to be nimble, to be very responsive to the needs of industry and of employers in our region. And so in many cases, we can serve as an incubator while we deliver training and also work with our academic partners to create new programs, certificates, degrees, credit pathways, et cetera. So we find ourselves in a really fortunate position to be very responsive and in terms of higher education, maybe a little faster to deliver a training program. So that's
great.
it.
Thank you. I like nimble. Amy.
So I was going to say good morning. No, it feels like we've been here, right? Good afternoon, and I'm the last speaker before Valhalla Crossings, so I'm going to try and be somewhat brief. I'm Amy Allen. I'm vice president at the Westchester County Association. For those of you who don't know us, we are an organization that focuses on economic development and public policy issues that drive growth in the region. And the reason Joanne mentioned that I'm working with Michael Oates, we have just recently announced an intention to merge with the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation, so we will now be the economic development engine for the whole 7 counties of the Hudson region, which is very exciting. But one of the things that Joanne asked me to speak about when we think about workforce development and things that can be modeled for the life science industry, the Westchester County Association, WCA, has been the project manager of a $9.8 million federally funded workforce development grant. And the purpose of this grant was to take the kinds of folks that Terry mentioned who were unemployed for 6 months or longer, most often because of circumstances sort of beyond, downsizing or people with lots of previous experience, and get them job ready, which is attitudinal and up-to-date skills in terms of resume, and put them back to careers in the healthcare sector. And by working with partners like WCC, they were trained with certain credentials that the employers needed. They had support services while they were going through training. The grant provided transportation, childcare, exam fees are covered. They had career coaches and job developers who worked one-on-one with them and then with the employers. And over 3.5 years, we served about 460 people, of which 360 are currently working, and many were trained right here at WCC. So why is that important? What we learned is that regardless of the population you work with, whether they're undergraduate students, adult learners, long-term unemployed, we work with employers. So you need to start with what does an employer need? And when you have nimble partners like the community college and some of our other academic institutions, you can find out what the employer needs. You can bring that intel back to the academic institution and make sure that the demand and the supply are in sync. I mean, a lot of times the supply side, i.e. the students who are graduating, they don't really match the demand side. And there's a huge need right here in our region, in the healthcare space. There's several thousand unfilled jobs, which, you know, that's a pretty big number. So I think if we can come up with a model, I think, Terry, you used the phrase talent pipeline. That's kind of what it's all about. That's part of cluster development. If you want to be in a region that has any kind of economic vitality, companies come where the talent is. So, I mean, even though the Amazon deal failed, they were attracted to New York City because that's where the talent is. Why is there a big life science cluster in Boston, Cambridge? That's where the talent is. So to the extent that we create the pipelines and the partnerships between the employers and the educators, it's a win-win. So we're really committed to making sure that happens and working with all of the stakeholders.
Does anybody have a comment or question you'd like to share? Okay. We are very excited because we have a date on the books to come and sit with you and talk about the Westchester certificate, which it happened, and I was teasing Dr. Houston. Are you still here? There he is. Okay, now I'll tell the story. So in the very first session for our Educators and Employers Roundtable, which is co-hosted by Amy and Carla, Dr. Houston said, I know you didn't quite say this, but I tell the story this way. He said, I go into the labs and nobody's hair is pulled back and not wearing a coat and they're in open-toed shoes and there's fire everywhere. and everyone around the table, and we had 7 colleges and about 5 companies that day, and they all went, yeah. So Carla immediately, within the first hour of this group meeting, we had something to start with, and so started to build out, and we are definitely looking for feedback, so if anyone here would like to look at the curriculum and see if you think it's comprehensive enough, would it really make a difference in making a hire, and those kinds of things, we have review copies ready to share. That by now bringing in, we did have employers at the table, but now in that next feedback stage, to be able to say, would this really make a difference to you? You know, that's where we are. We're basically, you know, we do everything. We build the plane while flying it. So we've got a nice document. We'll be piloting from the spring to the fall of this year, and then we'll be getting guidance from you and others about how can we help get this to be accredited, and I think there are certainly many other topics that might be appropriate to get into, but I think by starting with this and developing our partnership and maybe looking for funding to extend it into other places, it should be fairly universal information that would be valuable to anybody in the lab. So I'm excited about going forward with that, and that ongoing process may stimulate something like the workforce development program that you already have, but focus more on research in the life sciences, which is data and engineering as well.
Joanne, several of us, including Dr. Houston, were at a session yesterday led by somebody from the provost's office at SUNY to talk about micro-credentialing and how we put together credentials that are meaningful in the workplace that supplement or complement not only associate degrees in our case, but bachelor's degrees and doctoral work, et cetera. And so there is a structure within our system to be able to create a micro-credential, then show it through a digital platform so that an employer knows what it means to have received the micro-credential in XYZ Biotech, what the outcomes were, what the expectations can be from an employer for someone with that credential. So the pieces are in place.
Good timing.
And Joanne, I just want to add something to what Terry is sharing. Earlier, Jelaine referred to our Bright Futures program, which is an applied engineering. It's a partnership with Con Edison. But we find it's really critical that we help nurture our students by helping share what the world of work looks like in that sector. It's so specific. You know, it's you can't cross wires. You know, there's certain things you can't do. You could really hurt yourself. You could hurt other people. The public's at stake. So we find that the more we're able to get that message out and have our students meet with employers informally, network, hear firsthand. A lot of times employers came up through the same pathways, so they're getting that connection. But so the formal credentialing is important, and then it's also the socialization to go into certain sectors of work are really, really important. And when we have a large grant, or Perkins grant, it's really designed to help move students into career and technical fields. But that's what we hear from our employer advisory boards constantly, is the academics are very critical. Being able to apply those academics to whatever that sector specialty is really critical. And then helping our students learn the soft skills and behaviors and the mindset that goes along with being in whatever that sector is the third component. But when our students get it, they get really excited, and it only takes about 5 minutes for them to get really excited about going into the right pathway. So
I would just add one thing, and I know the soft skills phrase is maybe overused, but it can't be emphasized enough. We meet with employers. We've had many roundtables with all different industries, and basically to a person, you know, we keep hearing about the inability to communicate and to be part of a team and to understand that, no, you're not getting promoted tomorrow to my job just because you showed up today. There's, you know, so to the extent that we can, you know, continue to build on those kind of we call them job-ready skills, and it's not just about the technical skills. There's a HR manager for one of the largest physicians groups in this area, and his mantra is, I hire for attitude, I can teach aptitude. So, you know, there's a lot to be said. I mean, obviously depending on the career, but you can't emphasize that enough.
Well, I think that's a nice place to end. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone.